Hello and welcome to this video on crochet design, where I'm going to discuss thoughts and ideas behind the pattern for the shawl I'm wearing today, my design on the beach. So, on the beach is the pattern that was designed for a mystery crochet along in the summer of 2022, and it was only available in French at the time. This has its importance for the design since, as I will discuss later, a pattern for a mystery cow has a certain logic to it that isn't necessarily the same as for other patterns. It's now available as a complete pattern with pictures and all in English, Spanish and French, and you will of course find links to the patterns, all the linguistic versions, in the description box below. So, how did this design come to be? The first choice I made was to choose the yarn. This was for a mystery cow that was held in summer, so I wanted to use a lightweight, colorful yarn in what I'd call a summer fiber. I had already worked with Skepjes Whirl in other designs, and I wanted to use it again because I love the colors of this yarn. And now I wanted to pair it with its sister yarn, Skepjes Whirlette, which is a single colored yarn on the same base, as the gradient whirl. Using one cake of whirl and one ball of whirlette meant that I had 1,400 meters of yarn, which is almost 1,600 yards to my disposal. So that meant that I could choose a construction that required quite a bit of yardage. I could have chosen to make a stole, a rectangular shape, but I had already done the Marie Galante design in whirl, so I finally decided to make a half circle, or more or less half circle, using the pie method for increasing. Shortly put, this is the way to construct a circle, or half circle in my case, by increasing only on specific rows, but when you are increasing quite a lot. The original pie shawl formula established by Elizabeth Zimmerman indicates to double the number of stitches on the increased rows. I tried that, but I had to backpedal and increase a little bit less when I had come to a certain point in the shawl, because otherwise it would have been a ruffle and not the shawl laying flat. Also, the number of stitches in each row quickly became really crazy high. And even with 1,400 meters of yarn, I wouldn't have had enough to make a good sized shawl. So I had to adjust my idea. I adjusted my theory to reality, which is something that often happens when you are designing. But the advantage of this kind of construction is that after the first few increase rows, they are spaced further and further apart. So you are able to work straight for quite a number of rows before you need to increase again. And this means that you can easily integrate stitch patterns in your design without having to work out increases in the patterns. And this makes life much easier, both for the designer and the crocheter. When I selected the stitch patterns that I was going to use, I based them on my idea for the design. And my idea was really to sort of tell a story about a day on the beach. It's not literally a story, of course, but the idea behind the design is a day on the beach. So on a beach, you can find seashells, and shells are so typical of crochet. And there are plenty of stitch patterns based on shells. So I selected a couple, and then of course I modified them to suit my taste and the design as a whole. Then on many beaches, there's not only sand, but there are also pebbles. And pebbles are represented in the shawl by puff stitches, or if you prefer to call them nubs. I don't really know what's the real word for it. I put puff stitches in the pattern. And there are, of course, the waves. I was thinking both about the waves of the sea and, the wave patterns that are drawn by the wind in the sand. And to me, chevrons were quite the natural choice of stitch pattern to represent the waves. And thinking about the waves, finally, I couldn't resist finishing the border of the shawl with, the bubbly froth of the waves hitting the shore. So the very last row contains quite a few picots. To make the surface of the shawl more interesting and less traditional, I also used a bit of texture, which is so easy to do in crochet, and in my opinion, it really adds interest. Now, there are quite a few stitch patterns in the On the Beach pattern, because as I mentioned in the beginning, this was, at the start, a mystery cow. While I can certainly understand the charm of crochet project where you repeat the same stitch pattern throughout or for a very big part of the project, I don't feel that that's a good option for a mystery cow. Because when you open up your weekly email, I think you want to be a little bit surprised and you are ready to make something that's a bit different from what you made last week. But of course, some stitch patterns are repeated in the shawl. It gives the shawl more unity and it gives coherence to the design. But all in all, it's a very varied pattern, and I hope it will keep those who decide to make it interested all along. So I hope you found this journey through my design process for the shawl on the beach interesting. And if you want to make an on the beach shawl for yourself, you will, of course, find links to the pattern on Ravelry and on my own website below. If you have any comments, thoughts, questions about what I've discussed here today, please feel free to share those in the comments. In the description box below, you will find links to my website, my blog. You can also follow me on Facebook or Instagram and subscribe to my newsletter if you like to. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, or perhaps send it to someone you think will enjoy it as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.